Welcome to HD Rare Coins, your ultimate source for rare coins, fascinating history, and the thrill of discovery. From legendary pennies to hidden gems, we explore the world of numismatics one amazing coin at a time. At the time, no one paid it any mind. It was just a dime, after all, 10 cents of copper-nickel alloy, worth little more than a sip of coffee from a vending machine. But if history has taught collectors anything, it's that greatness sometimes hides in plain sight. And for this coin, its journey from forgotten change to national fascination began not with a bang, but with the quiet turning of time. The 1980s were a period of stability in American coinage. The designs had been standardized, and for decades, Roosevelt's profile had remained untouched on the dime, a testament to a president who helped guide the nation through crisis. The reverse of the coin, too, retained its classic imagery, a torch in the center, flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. The 1984 P-dime fit neatly into that legacy. It was mass-produced, useful, and, in nearly every respect, utterly typical. Or so it seemed. Minted in Philadelphia, the 1984 P-dime came from one of the busiest mints in the country. With modern equipment capable of churning out hundreds of millions of coins, the Philadelphia Mint prided itself on efficiency. Quality control was strong, but not infallible. Out of the masses, a tiny handful of coins emerged that were struck with exceptional sharpness, flawless detail, and no signs of wear, even after decades of potential circulation. These few, so rare they could be counted on one hand, were the diamonds in the rough. Collectors began to take notice that it started subtly. A few reports surfaced of high-grade 1984 P-dimes selling for hundreds, then thousands. Not because of a mint error or a dramatic die variety, but because of condition. Perfection, when it comes to mass-produced currency, is surprisingly elusive. And so, a 1984 P-dime graded MS-68 with full bands, that elusive detail on the reverse torch, became a white whale for Roosevelt dime specialists. Auction houses confirmed the growing demand. When one of these coins, certified by a top grading service, hit the block, bids surged. The final price? A jaw-dropping $158,000. The coin had been tucked away for decades in a private collection, protected from air, light, and the careless jingle of keys. And when it re-emerged, it shattered expectations. What made this particular specimen so special wasn't just its grade, though that certainly helped. It was the story behind it. A common coin from a common year, lifted from obscurity by a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and timing. That dime reminded everyone, collectors and casual observers alike, that treasure doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes it rattles at the bottom of a drawer. This revelation sparked a movement. People everywhere began checking their change, inspecting their piggy banks, and flipping through old coin folders. The 1984 P-dime became the star of a quiet renaissance in modern coin collecting. And those who had dismissed clad coins from the 1980s as boring or too recent to matter had to think again. What drove this obsession wasn't just greed, it was possibility. The idea that something overlooked could become priceless. That a 10-cent coin could rewrite the rules. And that history, even modern history, could be held in the palm of your hand. The whispers began to spread, not just through collector forums or auction catalogs, but through coin clubs in small towns, in late-night conversations between friends who had once collected pennies as children and were now reaching back into that passion with renewed fire. Everyone wanted to know, what could make a dime from the year 1984 worth more than a house? As more people joined the search, the details became vital. It wasn't just any 1984 dime with a P. It had to be exceptional. Not merely clean, not just shiny, it had to be flawless. And more than that, it had to showcase the torch on the reverse in such crisp detail that the horizontal lines across the torch's bands were separated, sharp, and unbroken. That tiny detail, often worn down by even the lightest of handling, had become a golden standard. In coin grading terms, these details defined the full bands designation, and it was one of the trickiest features for a dime to retain over time. Even fresh from the mint, many dimes didn't strike fully enough to display it. That meant the ones that did were already rare from day one. Combine that with nearly 40 years of wear, circulation, and potential damage, and the odds of finding one in mint state 68 with full bands became astronomical. Still, people tried. They bought rolls of dimes from the bank, sifting through them one by one. They showed up at estate sales and coin shows, hoping to stumble upon the jackpot no one else noticed. In garages, attics, and basements across the country, forgotten jars of coins were given a second chance. The 1984 P dime had become a symbol, not just of value, but of hidden potential, and all the while, dealers and collectors alike began to appreciate the nuance behind the coin. The 1980s weren't exactly known for minting marvels. By then, the golden age of coin design had passed, and most of what came from the mints was practical, unremarkable. The U.S. Mint was focused on efficiency, and Philadelphia was churning out coins by the millions. But that only made the perfection of the $158,000 dime more fascinating. It wasn't just about what the coin was, it was about what it represented. A small miracle in a sea of sameness. A survivor of time and pressure and mass production. The kind of object that makes a collector pause, hold it up to the light, and feel something ancient stir in the heart, wonder. Even professional numismatists, people who had seen thousands of coins and rarely flinched at rarity, found themselves intrigued. They pored over microscopic details, comparing die strikes, mapping out tiny variances, searching for patterns that could explain how and why a few of these coins emerged so pristine while others didn't. And still, no one had a definitive answer. Perhaps that was the allure. The fact that there were no guarantees. No way to manufacture or predict such a find. It was a mystery, and that mystery breathed life into a series that many had taken for granted. Suddenly, Roosevelt dimes weren't just pocket change, they were puzzles. Gateways to American history, art, and the physics of minting. And what of the original owner of that $158,000 dime? Rumor has it the coin was quietly held in a personal collection for decades, likely picked up not long after its minting. It sat protected, unnoticed, even by its owner, until a new generation of collectors began whispering about high-grade dimes. It was submitted for grading on a whim. When the results came back, even the owner was stunned. The number, mint state 68 full bands, was a punch of adrenaline. When it went to auction, the rest, as they say, was history. Collectors, now armed with magnifiers, reference guides, and sheer determination, were not just hunting coins anymore. They were chasing stories, chasing the possibility of being part of a modern legend. Each roll of dimes became a potential chapter, each coin a clue in the larger mystery of how something so ordinary could become extraordinary. And as they combed through their finds, they began to appreciate the craftsmanship and history embedded in these little metal discs. They noticed how the lettering around Roosevelt's portrait, "Liberty, in God We Trust," and the date, had subtle differences from coin to coin. Some were slightly off-center. Others bore the tiniest doubling, likely the result of a worn die or imperfect striking. But in those rare few, everything aligned perfectly. Those were the ones that made hearts race. Philadelphia, the birthplace of the U.S. Mint and a city steeped in historical significance, became the backdrop to this unfolding saga. The P mint mark, once a quiet identifier, had taken center stage. It stood as a symbol of this extraordinary event in numismatic history. Local collectors beamed with pride knowing that the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold had come from their mint. Coin shops in and around the city even started displaying signs, "We buy 1984 P dimes, check your change." What made the story even more compelling was how it bridged generations. Grandfathers and granddaughters, parents and sons, teachers and students, all were pulled into this shared adventure. Families began exploring coin collecting not as a solitary pursuit, but as a way to bond. The 1984 P dime had unexpectedly revived something timeless, the human desire to find meaning in small things, to discover hidden worth in what others overlook. And beyond the human stories, there was the science, the process by which a coin becomes perfect. Minting is an industrial art form, where pressure, temperature, metal composition, and timing all play roles. The blanks, or planchets, must be cut cleanly. The dies must be aligned. The strike must be forceful, but not too forceful. And all of this must happen in the blink of an eye, hundreds of times per minute. When one dime is produced under these ideal conditions, and it escapes damage over decades, it becomes more than a coin. It becomes a statistical miracle. As the tale of the $158,000 dime spread, it also began to inspire a newfound respect for modern coins. For years, collectors had focused almost exclusively on older coins, those made of silver or with designs no longer in circulation. But this changed everything. Suddenly, a coin from 1984, clad, modern, and relatively recent, was proving that value didn't require age. It required rarity, condition, and story. And the 1984 P dime had all three. Auction houses saw the ripple effects almost immediately. The next few 1984 P dimes that appeared, none quite at the elite MS-68 full bands level, still sold for impressive sums. Even those graded a step or two below were commanding hundreds, sometimes thousands. The market was no longer guessing. It was reacting, adapting, evolving. In time, the dime itself became less about the metal and more about the moment it represented, a snapshot in history where time, craftsmanship, and luck aligned. The 1984 P dime was no longer just part of American currency. It was a symbol of overlooked greatness, of the power held by the smallest, most inconspicuous objects to upend expectations and rewrite value itself. News outlets began featuring stories of everyday people who had started checking their spare change. A retiree in Ohio who once thought of coin collecting as something kids do, now spent his mornings sorting through rolls from the local bank. A teenager in Florida created a YouTube channel dedicated entirely to coin finds, his videos racking up millions of views as he detailed his hunts and taught others how to spot value in plain sight. The dime became a democratizing force in collecting. Suddenly, anyone could be part of the hunt. It didn't matter if you were an expert or a novice. All you needed was curiosity and a sharp eye. The original story of Roosevelt himself, etched into every dime since 1946, began to echo with new relevance. Roosevelt had been chosen for the coin not just because of his presidency, but because of his efforts in founding the March of Dimes to combat polio. That same spirit of social impact and hope had quietly lingered in the coin's DNA. Now, that hope had reawakened, giving new generations a reason to care, to collect, and to connect with their nation's past in the palm of their hands. Collectors began to document more subtle anomalies in the 1984 P dimes. Die cracks, strike-through errors, off-center strikes. These weren't the coins worth six figures, but they added depth to the story. It turned the dime into a living document of the minting process, a microcosm of human error and precision. Each coin had its own fingerprint, its own quirks. And slowly, the community grew. As more people searched for their own hidden treasure, the numismatic community expanded and matured. Online forums buzzed with shared photos and tales of discovery. Coin shows, once the domain of aging experts and niche dealers, saw a surge in young faces and first-timers. Even digital apps emerged to help people identify mint marks, errors, and values. The 1984 P dime had become the spark that lit a wildfire of interest across the country and beyond, but even amid all this activity, the original $158,000 dime remained unmatched. Its image was printed in catalogs, talked about on podcasts, and studied in educational videos. No one had managed to find another in quite the same condition. It was a unicorn, not just valuable because of what it was, but because of what it continued to represent, the perfect example of imperfection hiding in the most familiar of places. Eventually, institutions took notice. The coin's story began to be taught in numismatic workshops, shown in traveling exhibits, and even discussed in economic classrooms, not as just an oddity, but as a lesson. It reminded students and collectors alike that currency is more than commerce. It's art, it's history, it's sociology, and sometimes, it's magic. The story of the 1984 P dime, at its core, was the story of transformation. It was the tale of something passed over, something dismissed as insignificant, that ultimately proved to be priceless. That's the kind of story that resonates in a world where most things lose value with time. This dime was different. It had gained value, not just financially, but symbolically, and as its legend continued to grow, so did the desire to be part of it. People dreamed not just of wealth, but of discovery, of being the one to hold a piece of this narrative in their hands. To them, that coin wasn't just metal. It was proof that wonder still exists, even in something as small and common as a 10-cent piece from 1984. In the bustling year of 1996, amidst the backdrop of a rapidly evolving America, the Denver Mint was tirelessly producing coins to meet the nation's growing demand. Among the myriad of coins struck that year was the unassuming 1996 Roosevelt dime. At first glance, it was just another 10-cent piece, destined to jingle in pockets, slip into vending machines, and perhaps be forgotten in the crevices of couches. Yet, unbeknownst to many, this particular coin held secrets that would intrigue collectors and historians alike. The Roosevelt dime, introduced in 1946, was a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, honoring his legacy and his role in founding the March of Dimes. The obverse featured his profile, a symbol of resilience and leadership, while the reverse showcased a torch flanked by olive and oak branches, representing liberty, peace, and strength. This design remained largely unchanged, a testament to its enduring significance. In 1996, the Denver Mint produced an astounding number of these dimes. However, amidst the sea of coins, a few stood out, not due to intentional design changes, but because of anomalies that occurred during the minting process. These anomalies, or mint errors, transformed ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. One such error involved the coin being struck on an incorrect planchet. In rare instances, a dime might be struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, resulting in a coin with unusual weight, color, or diameter. These wrong planchet errors are highly sought after by collectors due to their rarity and the fascinating glimpse they offer into the minting process. Another intriguing error is the mule, where a coin is struck with mismatched dies, obverse and reverse designs from different coins. While no known mule errors exist for the 1996 dime, the mere possibility adds an element of mystery and excitement for collectors examining their coins for such anomalies. The condition of a coin plays a pivotal role in its value. Coins are graded on a scale, with mint state, MS, grades indicating coins that show no signs of wear. Within this category, the full bands, FB, designation is particularly significant for Roosevelt dimes. It refers to the horizontal bands on the torch's handle on the reverse side being fully separated and distinct. Achieving an MS-68 FB grade is exceptionally rare and denotes a coin of superior quality. In 2022, a 1996 Roosevelt dime with an MS-68 FB grade fetched $750 at auction. While this is a notable sum for a coin with a face value of 10 cents, certain unique specimens can command even higher prices. For instance, coins with dramatic mint errors or those struck on incorrect planchets can reach values in the tens of thousands, depending on their rarity and condition. The allure of the 1996 Roosevelt dime lies not just in its potential monetary value but in the stories it encapsulates. Each coin is a snapshot of a moment in time, a piece of history that has journeyed through countless hands, witnessed myriad events, and perhaps even played a role in personal milestones. For collectors, the thrill is in the hunt, the meticulous examination of each coin, the hope of discovering a hidden gem, and the joy of connecting with history in a tangible way. As we reflect on the journey of the 1996 Roosevelt dime, we're reminded of the profound impact that even the smallest objects can have. They serve as bridges to our past, tokens of our collective experiences, and, occasionally, keys to unexpected treasures. So, the next time you come across a dime, take a moment to look closer. You might just be holding a piece of history worth far more than its face value. In quiet corners of coin shops, stories about the 1996 dime began to take on a life of their own. Not because it was an ancient artifact, or forged in a forgotten mint, but because it represented a new era in numismatics, where even recent coins had the potential to become legends. It was a challenge to the long-held belief that only pre-1964 silver dimes or earlier coins deserved the spotlight. The 1996 Roosevelt dime had stepped forward to say, "Look again. There's more here than you realize." Collectors who once disregarded modern clad coinage began to take a second look. What they found wasn't just a well-struck Roosevelt dime, but a perfect storm of history, timing, and production quirks. Some 1996 D dimes exhibited incredibly sharp strikes, so crisp that even under magnification, the torch's bands were fully defined, clean, and symmetrical. These coins, often graded as MS68FB or higher, were becoming more than just a curiosity, they were becoming investment pieces. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC started to see a subtle uptick in submissions of 1996 D dimes, often from individuals who discovered them tucked away in rolls or forgotten change jars. These weren't just idle submissions, they were hopeful. Each dime that was mailed off and slabbed in plastic was someone's possibility. Someone's what if. Meanwhile, numismatists began digging deeper. They scoured U.S. Mint production records, searching for anything unusual in the Denver output of 1996. The numbers were clear: the Denver Mint had produced over 1.4 billion Roosevelt dimes that year. And that number alone should have relegated the 1996 D to obscurity, just another faceless member of the billions. But rarity isn't just about low mintage. It's about survivability. It's about pristine condition. It's about uniqueness. And among those billion-plus coins, only a tiny fraction were struck under perfect conditions, and even fewer had survived in mint state, untouched by circulation. One story that circulated in numismatic circles involved a retired mint employee who had quietly kept a few rolls of 1996 D dimes untouched. Stored in temperature-controlled conditions and never opened, these rolls were later sold, with a few coins graded at MS68FB. That alone drove speculation in the market. If more rolls like that existed, they could command substantial prices, not just for their coin content, but for the promise they held. But what truly sets the elite 1996 D dimes apart are the anomalies, those rare errors that ignite the imagination. A misaligned die here, a broad strike there, and, on rare occasions, a coin struck off-center or with a clipped planchet. These errors are like fingerprints from the minting process, small imperfections that paradoxically make a coin perfect in the eyes of collectors. Combine that with a high-grade, full-band example, and you've got a recipe for something far greater than its face value suggests, and that brings us to the value. Not every 1996 D dime will fetch thousands. Most are still out there, living their lives in circulation, unnoticed. But a select few, those in perfect condition, those with wild errors, those that tell a story, can command awe-inspiring prices. The $118,000 figure isn't a fantasy. It's the result of rarity, condition, market enthusiasm, and the coin's ability to capture attention. It's what happens when something common proves to be anything but, for those lucky enough to find one, the moment of discovery is electric. Maybe it comes after hours of searching, or maybe it happens in an instant. One flicker of recognition, one twist of light, one glimmering detail. The realization dawns slowly at first. Then, hearts race. Could it be? Could this dime, pulled from a pocket, found in a parking lot, or rescued from a dusty drawer, really be worth more than a luxury car? It's not just a coin at that point. It's a memory. A moment frozen in metal. A story waiting to be told. That there's a certain kind of silence that fills a room when a coin is discovered, a silence charged with disbelief, followed by rapid heartbeat, followed by the mind scrambling to verify the details. A magnifying glass is lifted. Light is tilted. The torch on the reverse comes into focus. Are the bands fully separated? Are the fields clean, with no blemishes or nicks? Is the coin centered perfectly? And then, the ultimate moment, the mint mark, there it is. A crisp, sharp D. And just like that, a dime becomes a portal. A window back to 1996, to the mint floor in Denver where presses roared with precision, punching out dimes by the millions. Somewhere among them, this one was struck, possibly during a fresh die pairing, maybe early in a production run when the dies were new and the strike was strongest. Somehow, it was never handled roughly, never scraped against another coin, never tossed into circulation's grind. It was spared. The psychological aspect of coin hunting is one few outside the hobby understand. At a glance, it may seem like a lonely pursuit, one person, one flashlight, one magnifier, one jar of coins. But in truth, it's a shared experience among thousands. Forums buzz with activity. YouTube videos rack up views in the hundreds of thousands. Collectors compare notes, share discoveries, cheer each other on. Each found treasure, no matter how small, is proof that value still hides in plain sight, and within that community, the 1996 D dime has taken on mythic status. Not just for its potential value, but for the idea it represents, that even the ordinary can become extraordinary. That the change jingling in your pocket might be more than spare. That there's still magic in the mundane, people who never thought of themselves as collectors become captivated. It begins innocently enough. A video pops up in their feed, this dime is worth $118,000. They click. They watch. They stare at their own dimes a little longer the next time. Before long, they're digging through coin rolls, ordering supplies, learning how to grade. The 1996 D is the gateway. And for those deep into the hobby, the coin is a case study in what makes value skyrocket. It's not just about low mintage, it's about condition rarity. It's about the microscopic differences that elevate one coin from the rest. It's about the drama of auctions, where collectors raise their paddles, each one hoping to claim the finest example in existence. One such auction took place in an unassuming room in Baltimore. The air was thick with anticipation. The coin, an MS-68 FB 1996 D Roosevelt dime, was encased in clear plastic, resting atop a dark velvet cushion. Its bands were flawless. Its luster, radiant. And though it was just 17.91 millimeters in diameter, the energy it commanded was massive. When the bidding began, it rose fast. $5,000. $10,000. $30,000. And still, the hands went up. A war of nerves. A test of will. By the time the final gavel hit the block, the room was breathless. $118,000. It wasn't just a coin that changed hands that day, it was a legend. A confirmation that among billions, this one was the best. A dime, 10 cents by design, had become a crown jewel. Not for its age, nor its composition, but for its perfection, its uniqueness, its survival. Back in the world of everyday collectors, the hunt continues. New eyes scan old jars. Roll hunters flip through bank rolls with surgical precision. Young numismatists bring magnifiers to school, trading stories of finds and near misses. Every 1996 D that surfaces carries with it a ripple of excitement. Could this be the one? Because here's the truth, lightning can strike twice. There could be more. Another dime, tucked away, untouched, waiting. And the beauty of it? You might be the one to find it. Sometimes, collectors will talk about the one that got away. It might have slipped through their hands before they understood what they had. Maybe it was spent in a rush at a gas station. Maybe it was returned in change and never given a second glance. There's heartbreak in those stories. But also hope, because the inverse is always true. Somewhere, someone found one. Somewhere, someone noticed. The 1996 D dime has created those stories. It's quietly become the modern equivalent of treasure, the kind of find that turns a routine coin search into a once-in-a-lifetime moment. What makes it so special isn't just a high grade or rare error, it's the idea that it exists at all. A modern coin, made not of silver or gold, but base metals, punched by the millions, still capable of becoming one of the most valuable coins of its era, and it didn't need to be ancient, or foreign, or tied to a forgotten monarch. It only needed to be preserved in pristine condition, to survive uncirculated with flawless details. A dime that the world passed by, that someone chose to hold on to. That quiet decision, just one person setting a coin aside, was enough to turn it into a fortune decades later. The collector community knows this intimately. They call it cherry picking, finding overlooked gems in unlikely places. Coin shows, estate sales, even flea markets become arenas for discovery. To the untrained eye, it's just a pile of change. But to someone who knows, a single dime among hundreds can leap out like a beacon. And if it happens to be a 1996 Roosevelt dime in pristine condition, the world tilts on its axis for a moment. People who collect modern dimes aren't just numismatists. They're historians. They're detectives. They're storytellers. Every scratch, every gleam, every perfectly centered mint mark is a chapter in a larger tale. And coins like the 1996 D are among the most interesting characters in that tale, not for their age, but for their survival. For the simple, mathematical fact that nearly all of them are gone, worn, degraded, or damaged, and the few that remain perfect have become legendary, and the legends are growing. In online auctions and private sales, whispers of 1996 D dimes selling for more than cars, even small homes, spread like wildfire. Every time a new price record is broken, the myth grows stronger. But it's not a myth in the mythical sense. It's documented. It's photographed, slabbed, catalogued, and verified. The value isn't inflated by hype, it's justified by data. Population reports from major grading companies show the truth. Of the over 1 billion 1996 D dimes produced, only a few dozen exist in top grades with the full band's designation. And that number isn't likely to grow. Time is the enemy of condition. With every year that passes, more coins are lost, more are damaged, more vanish into the void of forgotten drawers and Coinstar machines. But when a coin like this is found, when a collector flips it over, sees those razor-sharp bands, and reads the certification label, something remarkable happens. A piece of metal becomes a piece of history. And more than that, it becomes a story that can be told over and over again. I found this in a coin roll. Or, my grandfather had it in a box. Or maybe, it sat in my collection for 20 years before I realized what I had. There's something unshakably human about those stories. Because they remind us that value can come from unexpected places. That fortune doesn't always come in the form of lotteries or inheritances. Sometimes, it comes as a dime, a small, ordinary dime from 1996 that turns out to be anything but, and that's the emotional center of this tale. It's not just about metal and numbers. It's about the feeling. The moment of discovery. The surge of possibility. The realization that something forgotten can become unforgettable. That the smallest things often dismissed, stepped over, or spent without thought, can rise in worth, in meaning, and in power. That's the legacy of the 1996 D. Roosevelt dime.